Grand Theft Auto is one of the biggest names in gaming, but what you might not know is they have quite the history with handheld gaming too. Hello, and thank you for joining me on BigJimGaming, where we have new videos every Friday and lots of bonus midweek content just like this one today. And I'm going to be running through the history of Grand Theft Auto handheld version. The first game was Grand Theft Auto, a port of the original first game, genesis of the series if you like. This was on the Game Boy Color, and they basically tried to port the full game from the PlayStation 1 to the Game Boy Color, which in its time, an amazing achievement, and they actually did it really well, given the limitations of the hardware. This doesn't really get any love, but it should, because it's really impressive, and I've got to say, having had it originally when it first came out on my brand new Game Boy Color, it was a really, really good game. I replayed it a little bit today, just before filming this video, and it still holds up actually. It takes the original top-down view. They recreated the maps quite accurately from the original port. Yes, they had to dial the graphics down, but they've done that with pretty much every handheld port up until the Switch. So that's not a surprise. The graphic style still works very, very well. There's one problem with this game, and that is because you were playing on a small screen less than 3 inches, you couldn't see ahead very well, so you did crash your car quite a lot. That's one minor little thing on what was an amazing achievement, and actually a very underrated, really good game. The success of this followed up with Grand Theft Auto 2. Like Grand Theft Auto for the Game Boy Color, Grand Theft Auto 2 for the Game Boy Color was a port of the second game which they released for the PlayStation 1 console. Now, Grand Theft Auto 2 in general doesn't get a lot of love actually. It was set in the future as opposed to the modern day, and it's the only time Rockstar did this with the Grand Theft Auto series for quite good reason. It is not as engaging as the first one, but it is more Grand Theft Auto, and considering this was the second Grand Theft Auto game ever, we didn't have a lot to choose from, and I for one really enjoyed it both on the PS1 and on the Game Boy Color. I think it's a really good game, very, very misunderstood, as a lot of these early ports were. It's never going to win any awards, it wasn't when it was new, it's not going to now, but still a really good, fun game, graphically more or less identical from the first one, but hey, if it isn't broken, why fix it? Moving on to the Game Boy Advance, where they released Grand Theft Auto Advance. This was its own game. First time they'd done it for a handheld, where it was its own individual game. This game was really good. You had the slightly wider GBA screen, which made a big difference because you got to remember how small the original Game Boy Color screen was. I'm not saying the Game Boy Advance screen was huge, but it was an improvement. Slight graphical improvements as well, subtle, but you could notice it, especially if you were going from the Game Boy Color to the Game Boy Advance like I did. It was impressive. Plus also, it was on a handheld that was shiny and new. You couldn't wait to play your new toy. Grand Theft Auto was already the series everybody wanted to play, especially when I was a kid, because it was the one that your parents didn't really want you to play. It was really good fun. Again with the top-down view, but slightly improved. Nothing wrong with that at all. I still enjoy this view on games now, actually. Really good gameplay. The story, well, none of the early Grand Theft Auto games had much of a story, but that wasn't why you played it. You played it to steal cars, steal bikes, shoot people, run people over, and do absurd missions, the likes of which hadn't been seen before. This is a good one, and I do hope history is kind to it, because this port is still very, very playable today. Moving on to the next generation of consoles, and you will notice, so far, the only handheld that was missed out from Grand Theft Auto was the original Game Boy, because Grand Theft Auto didn't exist then. And the same with the next generation. We got one for this, and it came available on the Nintendo DS and the PSP. So this is the DS gameplay, or a picture of it anyway. I haven't been able to put any videos in because I did originally, and it got copyright claimed, and I don't want the hassle of that. So new recording, steals them. I hope that's enough for you. This is the PSP. Now, the differences between the two, because the game obviously and the story and the missions even were identical. The DS version had the bottom touch screen, And it did make some of the mini games, like when you were hot wiring a car, unscrewing the little cover and joining the wires together, a little bit easier to play than on the PSP. But graphically, it was a downgrade. The PSP version was a superior graphical version. I actually own and have played both. My preference is the PSP version. I prefer the graphical improvements, and I prefer playing on the PSP screen, which is obviously bigger than the original DS. Now, obviously, then the DSi XL and the 3DS XL came along, so you did get the bigger screen. But still, that's my personal opinion. What I would say is GTA Chinatown Wars is a brilliant game no matter what system you play it on. You can't go wrong. It's still actually probably my favourite handheld Grand Theft Auto game. It did not get a console release. You either played it on PSP or DS, or you didn't play it. And it's still the same now, unless you can get it on an emulator, of course. I don't know much about that yet. Honestly, really, really good game. I highly recommend Chinatown Wars to anybody, whether you like retro gaming or modern. It's just good fun. Here's a comparison of the two graphics. Have a look for yourself. You'll see the PSP is a little bit more polished, but just get it on whatever you can. If you own at least one of these handhelds now, get it. It's not expensive, 10 quid-ish. You should get change from it. Play a fantastic, forgotten GTA. Now, I've talked a bit about the PSP there, but you may not be aware that the PSP actually got two games all to itself. It got its own version of Liberty City and Vice City, ports from the PlayStation 2 versions. Now, the PSP actually enjoyed a lot of PlayStation 2 games ported to it. Obviously, it was newer technology, because the PSP was out with the PlayStation 3, but because it wasn't console quality technology in your hand, it could easily handle the previous generation. I've played these both. I haven't played through them both, if I'm perfectly honest with you, but I have played quite a few hours on each one. Because the PlayStation 2 version didn't really use the second analog stick that much, the PSP not having a second analog stick is not a problem. It's a full-blown 3D open-world PSP game, and it's Grand Theft Auto, which, let's face it, is the king of the open-world games. You just can't go wrong. They're amazing fun. In fact, I think possibly they're the two best games on the PSP. Definitely graphically. There's not many open world games on there either. And again, they're cheap. You'll get each one for around 5 quid-ish each. Pick them up. The PSP is still one of my favourite handheld systems, and these are quite possibly two of the best games for it. Now, next up, we had the 3DS and the PS Vita. And these were the first two handheld generations which did not get a Grand Theft Auto port. You could, of course, on the Vita, play the PSP games. You could play Chinatown Wars on your Vita, but it wasn't new to it. So, unfortunately, we've got to skip over that. And finally, our journey brings us to now. And, of course, we don't have a new current generation dedicated handheld console, but we do have the Nintendo Switch. I love the Nintendo Switch. I talk about it a lot, and I'm going to continue to because it's an amazing console. And, fortunately, we have a GTA game for it. Well, actually, we have three. We have the Grand Theft Auto Trilogy, GTA 3, Vice City, and San Andreas. In your hands to enjoy whenever you want. Now, of course, it's a hybrid console, so you can play them on your television as well. There's nothing wrong with that, because it means if you want handheld and console, of course, that's why people buy the Switch, or at least it's one of its main gimmicks. Also released for the Xbox and the PlayStation 4 and 5. It's not had a lot of love, let's be honest. When this was announced, I was really excited, because I owned those games originally on my PlayStation 2, and I really wanted to see what they'd do with them. I couldn't wait for an updated gameplay, because it does feel dated to play with the less familiar controls than you're used to now. I couldn't wait for updated graphics, because whilst they were very good for the PlayStation 2, current gen, no comparison. And what we got was something which, even for a big Rockstar fan like me, feels like it was rushed out and given no love. I'm not saying that they're bad games. I'm not saying they're good ports. The games themselves, of course, are actually really good because they're amazing the first time round. You can't take something brilliant, copy it, and make it rubbish because it's a copy. So the games themselves are solid, but it is one buggy mess. And you know what? It doesn't look as good as most remasters either. I'm going to throw that out there. I'm not saying they didn't do anything, but they certainly did not take it as far as they could. If you look at some remasters compared to these, they could have done so much more. I don't wish to end this video on a negative comment, so what I will say is, if you don't own older systems, like a lot of people don't, and you want to play these amazing classic games, the GTA trilogy gives you access to them. If you haven't played them, play them. You won't regret it. They're amazing, awesome, hours upon hours of fun. And the trilogy, at least it gives access to a younger audience who didn't play them the first time round. It gives access. And that is a positive because they are brilliant games. Just accept them for being a bit buggy, go into it eyes wide open, and as long as you can look past that, you've still got some amazing gameplay, which without it, you wouldn't have the rest of the legacy. So that was all the handheld games on dedicated handheld consoles. Something which I really don't think we're going to get anymore, unless you class emulators, of course, as dedicated. Since we've got the Switch now, I think hybrid's the way they're going to go. Not a bad thing. Love my Switch. Love it. But it's nice to look back at the past and smile and remember, or even play if you've still got access to, these wonderful games. What you do have, though, in the modern era, is still a way to play these games portably. Have you got a smartphone or a tablet? You're in luck. You have got amazing GTA games at your fingertips. Let's cycle through them now. These are actually really good. My favourite one is Vice City. It's actually my favourite classic GTA game, or retro GTA game if you like. And it is such a good port, honestly. If it wasn't for the touchscreen controls, I'd swear I was playing it on a PlayStation 2. It's every bit as good. I can't vouch for the others because I haven't played them yet. But you don't need to go out and buy an old retro console. You don't need to go out and buy anything. As long as you've got a fiver, download it off your App Store, Google Play Store, whatever it is you use, and you've got GTA in your pocket. Just like I did back in the day with my Game Boy. Give one of them a go. You've got it in your hands. You're probably watching this video on a device which will let you download them now. Spend a fiver. Have some amazing fun for dozens of hours. So there we have it. A short look into the GTA history throughout the years on handheld. I bet you didn't realise there were quite so many. Now, who thinks we'll get GTA 6 before I'm 50? Thank you very much for watching. Friday video in 2 days. Don't miss it. I'm going to do my best to make it a good one. Until then, watch this space.